Good morning, friends. Ramadan Kareem. Can you hear me? Thank you, Faris. Ramadan Kareem. Good morning, Asim. Yes, thank you very much. Ramadan Kareem to everyone. And a very warm welcome to today's session on Certified Global Sanctions Specialist. This is the certification which is in very high demand. And this certification is not a country specific. Sanctions can be imposed on any country, right? So this certification is applicable globally. So this is one tool, no doubt. It comes with a lot of cost, approximately $2,000 certification. But remember that it is a powerful tool in your hand. You go through any vacancies which are available in the market. It can be in a financial institutions, especially the bank, exchange houses, finance companies, okay? And even in the shipping, logistic, legal professions, you will see always there is a demand for a CAMP certification, whether it is a certified anti-money laundering specialist, whether it is a certified global sanctions specialist, or whether it is a trade-based money laundering specialist, right? So, and again, they have the crypto also. But all these four certifications are always in demand, and ACAMS is called as a gold standard. The reason why they have been called as a gold standard is they bring in all the practical things which is required at our desk. You might be working in a banking or any financial institutions or a shipping company, logistic company. This certification is a must. There are other certifications as well. And we at Edu Dubai, we also train people on Global Compliance Institute certifications, ICS certifications. But this certification from ACAMS is considered as a gold standard, not only in a private sector, but also in the government sector. You see any openings, right? There might be thousands of people with an experience who have worked in an IT companies, who have worked into financial institutions. But if I don't have this certificate, then the ATS system will not pick up my application. So out of 10,000 applications, only 10 to 15 CVs are picked by the system automatically. And one of the criteria for picking up those CVs is the certification. So there are thousands of certificates in the market. But when it goes to the ACAMS, you see the first preference is given by both private sectors and public sector. No doubt, along with the certification, we require an experience as well, right? To get entry into any organizations. And again, I will tell you in the market, there are many players who provides this trainings as well. Okay. There are various methods of delivering trainings. There is a shortcut method. There is actual case study method. Okay. And also there are trainers who just use the question banks and you prepare yourself and pass. So passing this exam is not a difficult. Applying is very important. Applying at desk or when you go for an interview, you will see when we discuss various case studies today, when you go for an interview, you should be able to face the interview. You might have a certificate, but are you capable of answering the questions at the time of interview. That is very important. And that is what we at EduDubai focuses on. We don't have any shortcut methods. Okay, so shortcut is out of our scope. We ensure that we provide you the latest information. We also provide you the case-based learning, not just PowerPoint presentations. Okay, so you will see some of the scenarios today. Today's session is a day one session, and you will see all the slides. What we have today is an interactive one. So I request all of you to participate wholeheartedly. And that is how we can learn. Next, the sanctions are pulling the financial institutions, pulling down the other sectors, pulling the country's economy. And finally, it pulls down you and me. Why you and me? Because when there is a sanctions imposed on an individuals, entities, or a country, definitely it impacts you and me. The confidence of the investors loses. And then what happens is we don't get a new investments in our country. There is a job loss, which we see, and it impacts the economy and the people in the economy, citizens in the economy. So it's very important that we must understand the sanctions. As I said, we might be working into financial institutions, shipping companies, software companies, okay, law firms. This certification is compulsory. And on your screen, you can see banks like BNP Paribas has been imposed a fine of 9 billion. See the amount of fine imposed. We'll discuss this case study also today in detail. See the amount of fine. See the impact of this fine on the reputation of BNP Paribas. See the impact of this fine on the employees of the BNP Paribas. Okay, so understand that compliance comes with a cost. If we don't have a proper knowledge, then we might suffer. We might be a victims of internal politics in the organization. So when any sanction is imposed or when any fraud happens, top management always look forward to identify few people and sack them first, so that they can show to the board, they can show to the public that yes, we have taken an action. And if I am working in the compliance department and I don't have this knowledge, then it is going to impact me as well. And I might be the first victim. Okay, you can see another penalty or sanctions imposed of 1.1 billion on Standard Chartered. So this is the cost of compliance. Today, we will see how the olden days sanctions was and what is a modern day sanction. Can anyone tell me what is sanction? Can you go to the chat and tell me what is a sanction? Yes, please. Good morning, Nitu, Ramadan Kareem. Yes, can anyone tell me? Yes, restrictions. Thank you, Mohammad Nazi. Restrictions on what? Restrictions on trade, right? Restrictions on import and export of goods. Restrictions on movement of the people, movement of the goods. So as rightly said, it's the restrictions, putting restrictions that includes trade, finance, travel, and embargo. Absolutely, Abdullah Khan. Thank you very much. So embargo is a broader restrictions. That means entire country, it's a comprehensive one wherein entire exports and imports are banned, right? Asim says it's a financial, physical, and other measures taken to prevent certain type of activities or to influence the behavior of the target. Absolutely. The behavior of the target. That is what we see here in the slides, correct? Deterrence. What is this deterrence? Discouraging the future action, bringing those changes, behavioral changes in the country's government, in the entities, and in the individuals. So behavioral changes are imposed or forced so that we understand the implications of the sanctions. So it's a preventive method. And if we don't follow, then we can see the punishments. Yes, Weil, thank you very much. As Weil said, sanctions are legally binding restrictions or penalties. Yes, it's legally binding. It's legally enforceable. We'll see that. Absolutely. Tanvir says sanction is a restrictive measure that can be taken against individuals, organization, and jurisdictions, even a whole country. Absolutely. So we will see the targeted sanctions and we'll also see the comprehensive sanctions today. Now, this examination of CGSS is divided into three domains. First is more focused on governance and enforcement. So today what we will see is approximately 10% out of 20% weightage. We will learn approximately 10% on the governance and enforcement, wherein we will try to understand how United Nations Security Council works, how United States Office of Foreign Asset Control imposes different types of sanctions, and how European Union, they also impose the sanctions. Plus, there are various other individual country sanctions also. Okay, but today we'll try to focus on these three sanctioning authorities. We'll also try to understand what is extraterritorial breach. Countries like US, the OFAC sanction that is not applied within the country. It is applied outside the country also. That means individuals, entities, and the country can also be sanctioned under the OFAC. And the third important thing is licensing. When we export or import goods, the license, there are different types of license. Okay, because there are certain goods like dual use goods. I'll give you just one example. The bicycle is a cycle which is used by you and me, right? It's called as an home consumption. But the same pipes which are used in the bicycle can be used for military purposes, for weapons of mass destructions. So this is called as an dual use goods. We need to be very careful. So when we export or import involved into trade of this type of dual use goods, we must take an permission. So we will look into the different types of licenses. The second domain is focused on sanctions compliance, wherein we look at different type of risk-based approach. Geographic risk, the customer specific risk, product specific risk. Okay. And the focus is on due diligence. We will see some very interesting scenarios today, wherein you will come to know how the risk is hidden and why we need to do the sanction due diligence. We'll be also teaching you on automatic screening tools. This is a hands-on practical experience. This is not today, but this will be in the 4th or 5th week, a practical hands-on experience. And ultimate beneficial owner. Identification of ultimate beneficial owner. There are rules. We need to understand the 50% rule. I'll just brief you that. Let's say Mr. A and B are two individuals who are sanctioned under the SDN list. Now these two individuals, they are the owner in company XYZ. And they participate 25% and 25% equity. So A and B is sanctioned, but company XYZ is not sanctioned. But when this A and B becomes an owner in XYZ, XYZ company is also automatically sanctioned. You will not find it in the sanction list. But you need to investigate A and B, in which other companies they are holding the shareholding. And does that shareholding is equivalent to 50% or more? If it is so, that entity is also sanctioned. So there are various rules. That is what we will try to learn in the second domain. And the third domain is more focused on investigations and asset freezing. There are various ways through which sanction evasion happens. We'll see some of the cases today. One of is stripping. What happens in stripping? When we send a SWIFT message, the sender and receiver's information, we'll be having a beneficiary, correct? The sender, his address, the goods might be dual use goods also might be there. And when sender or receiver is involved, if there are certain sanctioned countries name like Iran, Myanmar, or Cuba, automatically your correspondent bank will catch that and freeze the transactions or keep a hold on the transactions. They will not process it. So in order to bypass this system, what they do, they remove those keywords like Iran or Cuba or Myanmar, and they replace with some other words so that sanction screening software does not catch those keywords, sanction keywords, and the payment is processed. So there are various evasion typologies or methods which we'll try to learn in the domain 3. How to do the investigations, how to freeze and unfreeze. That is also we'll be learning in the domain 3. As I said to you, it's not just financial institutions who requires this CGSS certifications. Because your trade and logistic companies, export-import houses, dealers in precious metals, they all require, their employees require this CGSS certification. So when you do this CGSS certification, you opens up the doors, not only in the bank and financial institutions. It opens the doors for you in trade and logistic. And this is in very high demand. You can work for an law firm or an advisory consulting firm. You can work for a large corporates. So this type of certifications opens up the doors for you. And that is why it's called as an gold standards. Right? Now, coming to the examination. There are 100 multiple choice questions, and these are scenario based. And what you will be going through me today is all scenario based. So if you understand the concept, then it's very easy for you to apply at the job. And at the same time, you can face any interview. That is the focus of today's session. And this 100 MCQs, which is scenario based, you need to answer in 175 minutes. That is approximately 3 hours time. And you need to score 75 marks to clear this. So passing is not an issue. Only the very important thing is knowledge. Gaining the practical knowledge, that is where we focus upon. As I said to you, we have the software providers who will provide you 3 hour session on sanction screening and how to report. Then we also provide you 3 hours absolutely free session on AI, using AI in sanctions. This is also absolutely free. Plus, we also take another 3 hour sessions for enterprise-wide risk assessment. I'll show you an Excel sheet how an enterprise-wide risk assessment is done in a banking, in exchange houses. I will show you that Excel sheet later, wherein our policies and procedures are not just copy paste from other organizations. We need to understand the international framework, our country's national risk assessments, and at the same time, our products, our geographical presence, our clients, and accordingly, we need to apply the risk-based approach in our organization. Based on this, we also need to prepare our policies and procedures. So compliance is not a shortcut. Passing an exam is not in compliance. Okay, so focus is on understanding the national risk assessment because every country is different. When it comes to UAE, dealers in precious metal, high risk. Real estate is a high risk. Then law firms is a high risk. Right? So we need to understand the country specific risk, and that is how we can move forward. Now, this is today's February 26th. Today is the first session. This is absolutely free. This will continue till March 28th, and the sessions will be conducted on Thursday and Saturday. So if you are a working employee in our organization, you can request your employer to give you time in the office only to attend to this session on a Thursday. Saturday, anyhow, it's a holiday. So there is a 50% contribution from your employer, 50% from your side, and you can attend this session. And within a month's time, you can clear the CGSS certification. Now, timing is from morning 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is Dubai time. Okay, and it will be conducted using the Microsoft Team, the same way what we are conducting today. Okay, so 10 days, 4 hours per day. So in 40 hours plus 3 extra sessions on AI and sanction screening software. So this 6 hours is in addition to this. Plus, if we feel that yes, some of the students has some weaknesses that will come to know during the practice sessions, and there we can have additional sessions if required to clarify the doubts. Okay, so this is all about the global sanction certification and what we provide. Now let's enter straight away to the compliance framework, sanctions compliance framework and the governance. Now, when we talk about the sanction framework, as I said, first is the United Nations Security Council. Second is US, that is OFAC. And the third is European Union. Then there is an UK based sanctions. There is an Australian based sanctions. Okay. So there are different sanctions country specific as well. So today we'll focus on these three sanctions. You can see on your screen, sanction is a bridge, right? This is a bridge between the diplomacy and the war. Every country looks forward to a trade, and trade is a backbone of any country's economy. So if any country violates any laws, we'll discuss various types of sanctions, then the sanctions are imposed. So sanctions are restrictions. We try to solve the problem using the diplomacy. Sometimes diplomacy doesn't work. We have another option, that is go for a war. So when we go for a war, what happens? Unnecessary poor people suffers. Innocent people suffers, right? So we don't want that. So the best thing is impose a sanctions. So sanctions discourages the future bad acts. As said by participant, it changes the behavior. Yes. It prevents the flow of goods, especially the dual use goods, arms and ammunition, raw materials for the weapons of mass destructions. And if any country or an entity doesn't follow, there is a punishments, right? So sanctions is a foreign policy tool. Now, I request you to go through this email received from a CEO, which says, to Chief Compliance Officer, urgent, funds frozen, 50 million. Compliance, our 50 million transfer to the shipping logistic partner has been blocked by the correspondent bank in the New York. They are citing a sanction hit because the vessel is currently docked in Sevastopol, Crimea for emergency repairs. This is purely a misunderstanding. We are a Canadian subsidiary, not a US firm. Fix this and get the funds released immediately, or else we are losing $100,000 an hour. So think that this email came to you, or the CEO walks in the office at morning 9 o'clock, and you are the compliance officer of an organization, chief compliance or chief sanction officer of an organization. How you'll handle this scenario? Post a poll. Yes, the poll is on your screen. Can you see it? The CEO demands you release of a frozen 50 million transaction. Flagged for a stop in Crimea. arguing the goods are agriculture and the client is European. What is your immediate action? The first option is release the funds immediately to save the client's relationship and bank revenue. Second, keep the funds frozen and report the CEO to the board immediately. And the third is hold the funds and demand the underlying bills of lading and end user certificate to investigate further. So what is your answer? Yes. What is your answer? Yes, we have received 7 responses. It says all 7 says hold the funds and demand the underlying bill of lading and end user certificate to investigate further. Absolutely. So you have said hold the funds, right? Now I have a question to you. You have seen that there is a brief unscheduled stop at the Sevastopol commercial seaport, which is in Crimea, which is a part of Ukraine and captured by Russia, right? It triggered a sanction alert. But you see, the goods are not reached the destination. And goods are agricultural. Why? Why such stop created this problem? Can you tell me why? Yes, please. Shall I repeat the question again? This case very clearly says that it's an agricultural goods. Thank you, my dear Abdullah. Because targeted sanctions on Crimea, absolutely. So whenever there is a targeted sanctions on any port or on any specific region, we must not stop at such locations. We must not pay any fees at such ports. When we pay any fees to a port for any reason, it creates a documentary evidence. And the authorities might feel that, yes, stopping at that location, sanctioned location, that means either you are offloading some goods or onloading some goods, right? And that is where the sanctions has been imposed. CEO says that goods are agricultural, right? Doesn't that mean they are automatically exempted? What do you feel? Can the bank process such goods? It's agricultural goods. That is what CEO says. Correct? So CEO argues that goods are agricultural. Doesn't that mean they are automatically exempted? What do you feel? Is it exempted or no? What's your answer? Yes or no? Normally, agricultural goods, we feel that it's an exemption, right? Absolutely, Abdullah. Let's see what Abdullah says. No, if it is on a sanction place means sanctions seems like yes, Chabar port in Iran. Absolutely. So when it is region or a port is sanctioned, as Abdullah says, we need to take a precaution. Even if it is an agricultural goods, many a time agricultural goods are for a humanitarian or medical purposes, right? So there are humanitarian or medical goods which are there. They are allowed under the general license. But we as a financial institution, but we as a bank cannot blindly process them. We must conduct the due diligence. As you rightly said, we need to ask for the bill of lading, which is the port of loading and which is the port of offloading. And why the ship stationed either for a short time or for a longer time in a sanctioned port. That is what we need to verify. Absolutely. As Abdullah says, whenever you are providing the goods under humanitarian ground, like it might be agricultural or food items or your medicines, we must obtain an approval. And bank as a financial institution, we must be very careful with this type of documentation. Just obtaining documentation is not sufficient. Verification is very important. Otherwise, anyone will give you some photocopies, edited photocopies. And today with AI, we can generate anything. So a country has a verification system, right? We have customs. We have logistic companies through which we can verify all these documents. So just not identification, but verification is also very important. Correct? So although it is an agricultural goods or a humanitarian goods, we should not go blindly and process such things. We must ask the additional documents and verify it and see. Very important is end use of the goods, because there are certain goods, as I told you, the pipes which are used for a cycle can also be used for weapons of mass destructions, and that is called as dual goods. Right now, you know, the CEO is furious. He wants you to immediately release this, talk to the correspondent banking. As a sanctions compliance officer, what is your role? You know the three lines of defense, right? The first line of defense is the business unit or the operational unit, that is CO also comes under that. He will always put a pressure, please release. Relationship manager will come 100 times to you, he will call you. So as a compliance person, so compliance and risk is the second line of defense. You will be always pressurized. And the third line of defense is your internal audit. And fourth line is your external auditors and the regulators. So now you are at the second line of defense. How you will handle this situation? Can anyone tell me? Oblige the CEO, because CEO is putting pressure on you. He might say that sanction compliance officer, if you are not releasing this, you are not fit for the job and you lose your job today. Act fast. So this type of serious calls you might receive from the business unit. How you will handle this? What is your role as a second line of defense? Can anyone give me? One or two clues? Convinced that the cost of non-compliance can be far more than losing 100,000 per hour. Absolutely. Thank you, Asim Faisal. As a compliance person, because you have seen various sanctions imposed, various penalties imposed. If you see, this things has happened 10 years back or 15 years back, and now the OFAC or other authorities are imposing penalties. We'll see some case studies today. So this can come up anytime. As a we might satisfy the business unit, but the cost of non-compliance of the regulatory requirement is much more damaging. We will see some cases where we earned X amount and we paid more than X, right? Loss of reputation for the financial institution, loss of people, the compliance head will be sacked, the CEO will be fired, board will be replaced. So this is all complications. Do we want all these things? No. Mohammed Nazri, due diligence is required. Yes, the compliance sanctions compliance officer need to do the due diligence, do the review, verify the document. Non-compliance is higher than the cost of compliance. Absolutely. Abdullah says need to make the risk assessment report and call the emergency compliance committee minutes of the meeting for your documentation. Absolutely. In short, what Abdullah says is, as a compliance officer, as a second line of defense, I need to independently oversee, not under the influence of CEO or any other people. I am an independent person and I need to report this based on the risk assessment. What can be the consequences of this to the board, right? Thank you, Abdullah Khan. You have pointed out very important information, that is committees. So the compliance persons reports to the board committees or the board of directors, right? So if CEO is putting a pressure on you, you did not say yes to the CEO and oblige him. You have two types of options. Get sacked from the CEO for non-complying or get sacked from the regulators for not complying the regulatory compliance requirements. Which one you will prefer? I don't want both. I need to do my duty. That is where the independence speaks about, right? So as an independent person, whoever the business units puts any pressure on me, I will not bow down to them. I will definitely discuss with the CEO first and tell him, I fully agree with your business requirement, but understand the seriousness of this. This is not limited to our financial institutions. It is not limited to our country. The consequences are much bigger, right? Because when a dollar is involved, it touches the US territory because all our dollar transactions are cleared through US correspondent banks or clearing systems. So automatically US will come. OFAC will impose a sanction on our financial institution, on that shipping company, our employees as well. And first will be the compliance sanctions officer. Do we need that? No. So if I'll be get sacked either from the CEO or from the regulator, let me first do my job sincerely. And nowadays, the sanctioning authorities, they are not limiting the sanctions or penalties just on a country or an entity. Even the individual officers have been identified. And if you are from UAE, you might have heard that one of the exchange of money exchange houses branch manager was also imposed a huge penalty. So to take the right decisions backed by the evidence, that is what Shafi says. Yes, we need to do that review and put our independent feedback to the CEO, discuss with him first, tell him the consequences of it, because CEO has not gone through this certification of global sanctions certification. He's the business person. He will look at the revenue, bottom line, how his profit of the bank can increase. Absolutely, he's right. But we have been appointed to guide him what is wrong and what is correct. So as a person, I need to guide. As a compliance head, I need to guide the CEO and convince him, right? Let's say the chief sanctions compliance officer agrees to the CEO's request. What is the danger for the organization that we work for? Whether our commercial gains will be more or the cost of regulatory compliance will be more. Definitely, you said just now that cost of non-compliance is too heavy, and that is what we have just shown you the initial slides. The 9 billion fine imposed on BNP Paribas, which is a huge, right? So if CEO attempts to override your decision and forces you to release the funds by talking to the correspondent banks without doing a due diligence, it's your duty to inform officially. First, discuss on a phone, put up an email to him, because OFAC, European Union, United Nations Security Council resolutions or UN sanctions, they don't go with your intentions. They go with the violations. So if you want to protect, you need to put it in documented. We will see in some cases how some of the compliance or sanctions officer, they protected themselves because they have documented this. So any questions from your side on this case? Do you feel this is practical? It can happen in an organization? Yes. Now let us go little to the history, how the sanctions had started. What was the olden day sanctions and what is modern day sanctions? We can see 432 before Christ Megarian decree. This is the first economic sanction, wherein the Athens banned the merchants from the another city of the same country, that is Greece, that is city of Megara. They stopped them from accessing the markets and the ports. And what they did? These sanctions crippled the economy and protected another city of the same country. So remember, this started in the year 432 BC. This is the first case. You need to remember this from your exam point of view also. Second, you can see Pacific blockades. The Navy is used, or the warship has been used to block the country's coastline. So when warships are used to block the country's coastline, it cut off all the imports and exports. This has been done by Britain, Germany, and Italy against Venezuela. The same things also have been done by the Napoleon against the British trade. This has happened in the 19th century. Then, yes. Then in the 1919, you can see the League of Nations. Post World War I, countries coordinated and imposed an economic isolation. Again, this was done to protect the trade from other countries. And in 1945, the United Nations Charter, the UN Security Council, through Chapter 7, they brought the formal foreign policy tools, which we'll discuss in detail today. So United Nations works on a multilateral sanctions. Now, when we talk about a multilateral sanction, it's not one country that imposes the sanctions, right? So in UN, if I'm not mistaken, there are around 197 countries which are the UN members. Okay. Out of that, 15 members, 5 members are veto members. They are powerful ones. And rest 10, they change. They are there for 2 years. Bahrain, Pakistan, they are presently the 15-member committee who passes the resolution at the moment. Okay, so UN Charter we'll discuss in detail as we go in the next slides. Next, you can see present day sanctions. In present day sanctions, imposing a ban earlier under the UN Charter on an entire country, or we call it as an embargo, as I said, it harms the innocent person. So present day sanctions are much better. They are smart sanctions, and it is targeted on an individual or an entity or a sector. Some of the examples are given to you. Asset is freezed. Once asset is freezed, that entity's asset is freezed, or individuals or an terrorist organizations assets are freezed, they will not be able to buy the arms and ammunitions, raw material, right? Travel bans on the individuals. This is also a smart sanction. Instead of putting a comprehensive sanction on all the people, it's better to identify those people, either a terrorist individuals or the people who are politicians who violates the sanctions, on them impose a targeted sanctions. That is a smart sanctions. Okay, so this is a present day sanction system. I have a case for you. You can see targeted versus comprehensive sanctions. You all are a United Nations Security Council members. And you can see a fictional nation had just suffered a violent military coup and human right abuse are escalating. So in a country, military or some groups take control of the government and they make the life of the citizens hell. Now you are a part of this UN Security Council resolution. Yes, absolutely, Abdullah. So you are a part of Security Council resolution. And as I said, there are 5 permanent members of the council that has the veto power. That means out of this 5, if one of them says, no, I don't agree, this resolution cannot be passed. Okay. So as an UN Security Council, which strategy do you vote for? There are 2 options. First is comprehensive sanction. That means a total trade embargo. That means no import exports are allowed in that country. And what happens? The country's economy crushes. And when the country's economy crushes, they are forced to surrender. That is the option number 1. And option number 2 is targeted smart sanctions. That is, identify those military groups, identify those military leaders, and freeze their assets so that civilians don't suffer. Let me see if I can activate that poll, or else go in the chat and tell me. Just give me 1 minute. Let me see if I can activate that poll. Yes, go ahead. So you prefer the targeted smart sanctions, right? What about others? So 86% of the people says targeted sanctions are absolutely good. Because why? Unnecessary other people suffer, right? And 140 or 10% of the people says comprehensive sanctions. So you have passed a resolution. You have passed a resolution now stating we will go with the targeted sanctions and not with the comprehensive sanctions, right? So that is a good decision by the Security Council. But understand that if you want to go ahead with this comprehensive sanction, out of the 15 members on the Security Council committees, as I said, out of 15, 10 members keeps on changing every 2 years and 5 members are permanent. And Russia is one among them. US is among one, UK is another, correct? So you can see US, UK, Russia, China, and France. If Russia says no, our Security Council resolution will be rejected, right? Because these 5 countries are P5, which is called as a powerful veto countries, powerful 5 countries. So what is important? Out of 15 members, 9 members minimum needs to agree. That is the majority. After 9 members agrees, all these 5 members also should be part of that. They also must agree. If one of them, because Russia is also sanctioned, right? So when Russia says no, Security Council resolution will not pass. And when Security Council resolution is not passed, the other option opens is OFAC. US gets into action. European Union gets into action. Okay, so you can understand here, this is a multilateral. One country cannot decide. It's the 197 countries representation through the 15 Security Council members. Out of that, I said 10 is appointed for a term of 2 years, and rest 5 are powerful. They remain permanent there. And one of them says, no, the Security Council resolution cannot pass. And that's where the UN OFAC sanctions are more powerful. Okay, I'll share you one link. Just go through it later, not now. Great. So I can see that all options are B. You look forward to a peaceful resolution of this, right? Without harming the sincere citizens of the country. That is the best option. But understand that, my friend, how the UN resolution needs to be passed, how the veto power countries, that is US, UK, Russia, China, France, need to compulsorily, all 5 compulsorily need to agree. One of them says no, that is the veto power, then gone. Our resolution cannot be passed. So let's go back to our case. Can I know what is the main humanitarian criticism of this comprehensive sanction? Why you don't agree with this comprehensive sanctions? It's discriminatory, right? Because we are an innocent citizens of this country. If politicians does something wrong, why we must suffer? So we are against the comprehensive sanctions. That is what you have passed the resolution just now. Tell me, yes, Zabiullah. Civilian suffers. That is what we have seen in countries like Afghanistan. We have seen this in Syria, correct? So yes, agricultural and medical supply will affect. That is what we can see in certain countries wherever there is comprehensive sanctions. Unnecessary poor people doesn't have the basic medical support, right? Because most of the medicines comes from the other countries. Now, tell me, how do smart or targeted sanctions solve this problem? Why this is smart? Yes, absolutely, Sabi. So now when you listen to today's session, many things will your mind start brainstorming, and you will see many things. You will feel that yes, we suffer this. Okay, so that is what knowledge is very important. Can you tell me how this smart or targeted sanction solves this problem? You know, the military cop. What can happen through smart sanctions? While says put pressure to solve problem, before taking escalation decisions. Yes. So earlier identifying the problems and resolving, that is absolutely one method. But they have already created this situation. How you will handle this? You said we will do these smart sanctions. What is smart sanction? You will identify those military individuals, right? Military leaders. You will identify those entities who are involved into such violent activity, and we will freeze their assets so that when you identify and freeze their assets, definitely it will not impact the civilian, other citizens who are innocent. Now we have discussed just now that United Security Council, United Nations Security Councils requires a resolution to be passed, right? Tell me why it is called multilateral. Because we need to know what is the meaning of multilateral and unilateral. Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of multilateral? Multilateral means it's not in the hands of one country or one group. It is when it comes to the United Nations. Yeah, yes, Adarsh. So several steps are involved. More than one country is involved. So United Nations is represented by around 193 countries, right? And there is a Security Council, which is 15 members. Out of 15 members, I said 10 are temporary, 5 are permanent. So there should be consensus. Majority must agree. All veto powerful countries, they must agree. That's why we call it as a multilateral. Right? So understand the meaning of multilateral. And as I said, if one of the permanent members they refuse, then this resolution cannot be passed. Now, UN Security Council mostly enters when there is an human rights violation. And we call it as thematic. That is focusing on terrorism or focusing on human rights or focusing on proliferation of mass destructions. Because all these things, we call it thematic, that is terror, human rights, and proliferation financing. That means weapons of mass destructions, raw material or supply or technology, which can be chemically, biological, is provided to the other countries. And you know, when such weapons of mass destructions or there is a terror or human rights violation is there, your UN Security Councils enters and they try to pass a resolutions. But what happens now? Russia will not agree. When Russia does not agree, then I told you that US has a power. And US brought a powerful act which is called as an Magnitsky Act. And this Magnitsky Act provide extraterritorial reach. It does not remain within the US boundary. It can go to any country and take an action. I will share you one article. Don't go through it now. You can go through it later. But save this article, because as a sanctions compliance officer, you must know this rule. Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, go through this article. If you browse there, you will see an article called as an Global Magnitsky Act. Let me share you. I shared you. But I request you to follow to this regulatory radar. The reason behind that is you see those articles. These all articles are very important for the compliance people. Okay. So this Magnetics Act, as I said, when United Nations Security Council, they cannot act against the human rights violation or fight against the corruptions, because this type of things, weapons of mass destructions, all this impacts the innocent citizens. It does not only impact your country, it impacts others also, because all terrorist activities is not within one country. It moves to the other country. So we need to protect each other. So Magnitsky Act is a powerful act. And what it says freezing of assets, whether it's an individual or entities. Ban the entry of the people in United States. Stop US person in dealing with the other countries. Now, who is US persons? It can be individuals, the companies who is importing or exporting from US, the banks. This is very important. Banks, as we know, more than 50 to 60% of the world trade happens still in US dollar. So if any individual entity or a country misuses human rights, then this Global Magnitsky Act comes into the picture. And you can see the birth of this UN Magnitsky Act came into picture when it's in 2012 when this act has been passed. And the reason behind passing this act is there was a person who was called as an Sergei Magnitsky. He was a Russian tax lawyer. And he found that more than 230 million fraud was done in the taxes by the Russian officials. And he exposed this in 2009. What the Russian government has done? They have put him behind the bars. They have arrested him. They tortured him and he died in the prison. So 2012, then President Obama has passed this Magnitsky Act so that sincere people are not targeted. Upright officers are not targeted. If you see, this is nothing to do with the USA, right? This Magnitsky Act is nothing. This was passed by USA to protect their country, but nothing to do with other countries. But they interfere in this. Why? Because United Nations, if they want to pass this resolution, Russia will not agree. And when Russia doesn't agree, then we need to come into picture. That is how US comes into the picture. Right? So then in 2016, they expanded and made it as a Global Magnitsky Act, and the scope was increased to other parts of the world. So they have applied this in Myanmar, they have applied it in South Sudan, they have applied in Saudi. 17 Saudi officials linked to the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. So it's beyond the territory of the US. So we as a compliance person must know about this Global Magnitsky Act because US OFAC can enter our territory, it can enter our entity, and it can enter me as an individual also. Correct? So that is the importance of your Global Magnitsky Act. So this is how the human rights are protected when US is not able to, United Nations is not able to pass resolution. US OFAC comes into the picture and they issue, they apply this Magnitsky Act. Next, we have another simulation. The facilitation trap. Who is subject to sanction? See this interesting case. You are a US citizen working as a senior manager for a European subsidiary. You're not working for a US company, but you are a US person. You are a citizen of US, you are born in US, okay? Or you hold a residency of US and you are working for a subsidiary of a multinational oil service firm. An urgent email arises from an European team asking you to approve a routine high-value contract for a drilling equipment. However, reading the fine prints, you realize the equipment's final destination is project in Iran. You are a US person. You are not working for an US entity, but you are working for an European subsidiary, right? And you can see European subsidiary wants to provide certain goods to Iran. Now you need to decide. You have three options. Approve it. I will activate the poll. Approve it because the company is European and EU laws permits the trade. Option B, ignore the email and let someone else approve it. And the third is escalate to legal, citing the US prohibitions on the facilitation. So you have given me C option, no issues. I will just activate the poll as well. Great. Go ahead. So we can see no one says ignore the email and let someone else approve it. That means I take my responsibility. I don't hide away from my responsibilities, right? That is good. So 64% of the people says escalate to the legal department, citing the US prohibition on the facilitation. Yes, that is good answer. Approve it. EU laws permit it. Okay. So thank you very much for the poll. You have given the right feedback. Yes, we need to escalate this to the legal. Now my question to you is, why does US law applies to the transactions executed entirely by a European subsidiary? Can anyone tell me why this is applicable to European subsidiary? Do you know that? Absolutely, Robin. Thank you very much. Robin says secondary sanction. Abdullah says because of dollar and US citizen. Absolutely. Because this person, Tanvir says secondary sanctions. Yeah. Now let us understand US citizen. If I'm a US citizen, now what is primary sanctions and what is secondary sanctions? This is what we'll learn through this case. Now primary sanctions are applied on a US person. Now who is US person? It can be an US individual, citizen of a country, resident, or it can be a legal entity like companies. Correct? So if any US citizen or any legal US entities, if they deal with any sanctioned country, then there will be a primary sanction on the US individuals, US entities. That is why, as a US citizen, as a senior manager of a European subsidiary, he will not approve this because he knows US has been sanctioned by US sanctioned Iran, right? And if I approve anything, I will also be considered as a primary sanctioned entity, individual. Sorry, not an entity, individual. So that is why US person will not approve it. He will escalate to the legal department, citing that there is an sanction on the Iran and I am a US person. And if I approve it, there will be primary sanction on me. So US citizen will not involve with the sanctioned countries. US entities will not supply any goods to the sanctioned entities like countries like Iran or Myanmar or Korea or Cuba. They will not do this because there will be a primary sanction on the US entities, US individuals. So they will not involve directly, neither they will not involve indirectly. We have a wonderful case, ZTE Telecom. How a US company created a subsidiary, imported the goods, and then supplied the goods to the Iran. By manufacturing some goods, they supplied to Iran. So even when we are manufacturing the goods, we need to be sure what percentage of US raw material is added into that product. If you are importing some raw material, manufacturing the goods and supplying to Iran, and tomorrow US comes to know that the raw material used for this purpose is from US, the supplier from US, the raw material supplier from US will be imposed a primary sanction, and that entity who is manufacturing that product with some raw material from the US and other countries, they will be imposed a secondary sanction. Right? Someone said dollar. In this transaction, European subsidiary provides the goods to the Iran. Let's say there is no raw material involved of US. European Union can supply European Union can supply the goods to Iran. Do you agree or you don't agree? Can European Union supply the goods to Iran or no? Yes, can European subsidiary? Sabihullah says no. Just give me 1 minute. Huh? Abdullah says yes, they can. Just give me 1 minute. Let me, so I'm not able to get the view. Yes, just give me 1 second. We'll discuss. Okay. Yeah. So what are the options you have given? Yes, they can if they don't have put the sanctions. Abdullah says even India is purchasing oil from Iran, even they have sanctions till the time dollar is not involved. Yes, Abdullah Khan, absolutely, you're right. China is buying, Europe is buying, right? because Iran is subject to comprehensive US sanctions administered by the OFAC. Absolutely. Now let's understand that European Union has passed their resolution to counter the US OFAC sanctions. And European Union says not to follow the OFAC sanctions, follow the United Nations Security Council sanctions. But if OFAC says don't follow it, that is not applied to the European countries. And if any entity follows OFAC sanctions, we will ensure that we will punish you. We will impose a penalty for following the OFAC sanctions. So European Unions, they don't follow the OFAC sanctions, but they follow UN sanctions. Now, in this case, if the dollar is not involved, right? If dollar is not involved, then European Union might, that company in European subsidiary might supply that goods to Iran. But understand, drilling equipments is might be under the dual use goods. We need to see. If it is under dual use goods, we must not supply that. Even if it is non-OFAC sanctions, we must not supply, right? So European subsidiary has a powers not to follow the OFAC sanctions. That is given by the European Union to them. But one very important thing is we need to see how the transactions are dealt with. If US dollar comes into picture, US will not leave them, right? If dual use goods are there, that is also we discussed about thematic, right? Human rights, weapons of mass destructions, that is serious. So these countries will not provide the support. And that is where we need to escalate this. Now you have seen facilitation. What is this facilitation? The US law says, yes, yes, Robin has given. Please note that the European does not rely solely on the UN sanctions. While the EU implements sanctions adopted by the UN Security Council, it also maintains its own autonomous sanctions regime. Absolutely. So one is UN, second is OFAC, third is European Union, correct? As a result, some European Union sanctions reflect UN measures. Some go beyond them and others are entirely independent of the UN framework. In practice, EU sanctions are directly applicable within the European Union. Absolutely. So one, as you rightly said, it's applied within the European Union, but OFAC sanctions, they can refuse. Subject to one, when the dollar is involved, it will impact them. Second, when dual use goods are there involved, then also. So facilitation trap is US person must not approve, finance or guarantee any transaction that is prohibited from engaging directly. And he will be imposed primary sanction. Can he avoid the liability by giving a verbal advice without signing the contract? Can he do that? What you feel? Can this US citizen say, I will not approve? Can he do that? Verbally. Because he knows now that this is a transaction which goes to, yes, very important, Fazil, blind, willful blindness, right? If I know that this goods is going to Iran, I'm working for this company, I'm a US person, I cannot keep silent. I cannot just guide them verbally and say, I'm not in the picture. You are the person on an authority position. So definitely you need to put it on record, stating that this will violate, although the European Union or the entities can deal with the Iran, but we need to see if it is a dual use goods. If it is dual use goods, we need to quote there. If the dollar transaction that will impact, yes, we need to quote there. And he also need to state that being an US person, I cannot, because there will be a primary sanction and you also must not involve into this deal. He clearly needs to state this. Correct? So you got the feel of an employee working, US employee working in other jurisdictions. So this is one case. Next is on multilateral and unilateral. Okay, we discussed this earlier. Yeah, we'll leave this. Yeah. Now let's come to the US and European Union powers. So we have seen just now that United Nations Security Council has the powers, but the problem is the veto. One of the countries, if Russia doesn't agree, we cannot pass any resolution there, right? So there are two other arms which is very active. One is your US, and here you can see they call it as unilateral. The reason behind that is they can independently take the decision. And who can take the decision? It's the US president. So when United Nations fails to act, okay, so autonomous powers are there with United States of America. And those powers are given to the president. You can see this. IEEPA, International Emergency Economic Power Act. So he can get up anytime. And if he feels that, yes, there is an emergency, he can impose sanctions. Because US knows if it goes to Security Council, UN Security Council, there will be a veto. So US will act. And there is another act which is called TWEA. That means Trading with the Enemy Act. And again, this is a power, yes, executive orders of the President Trump. Absolutely. So this is a powerful weapon which is in the hands of the US president. He did not go to other people to get an approval. He can decide single-handedly. And that is what he is doing nowadays. Right? So we have seen OFAC sanctions on some of the Indian shipping companies, Omani shipping companies, then UAE shipping companies. some individuals as well. And what has happened there? They restrict the trade. Under this Trading with Enemy Act, they either restrict the trade with that entity or an individual or a country. They freeze their assets. We have seen some shipping companies' assets have been freezed. The sanctions has been imposed on them. They seize, freeze, and confiscate the assets. So this is a superpower which is available with them. And this is monitored by OFAC, which is a unit of your Treasury Department of US. So you can understand the difference between multilateral and unilateral. Multilateral, we require a consensus of the members. Unilateral, single country or single individual, autonomous powers are there. Given by the law, he can use this. Second is the European Union. European Union, how many countries are there in European Union? Yes, 27 or 29? Yeah, 27. Thank you. So Europe, when it comes to the European Union, all the European member countries must agree. It must be my majority, multilateral, right? And we can see that this is also very important for the European Union. They agree most of the time. Reason behind that, each country's boundaries are open within the European Union, and any country doesn't agree, it will affect the others. And the European regulation is binding on all the 27 member countries. And it is enforced by Germany and France, who monitors all these things. So understand the multilateral powers and unilateral powers. United Nations Security Council, they have multilateral powers. USA, they have unilateral powers. And European Union, again, it is similar system like United Nations, so multilateral.